Tessa stood up at the scholarship ceremony and raised her voice over the applause. She told the entire town hall that I had stolen the community fund. 200 people went quiet. The pastor lowered his microphone. The mayor turned his head and stared at me. My own sister, the girl I had carried out of the hurricane shelter wrapped in my coat, was standing there holding a printed bank statement above her head like a torch. She said she had proof. She said I had been lying to every single person in this town for a year. I sat in the front row and I did not move. I did not speak. I did not even breathe deeply. Because I had known, the moment her chair scraped back, that this was the day she had been waiting for since the funeral. What Tessa did not know was that Mrs. Jordan had been quietly recording her for 11 months. What Tessa did not know was that the sheriff already had her bank records sitting in a brown envelope on the front pew. What Tessa did not know was that this town had loved my parents more than she had ever bothered to understand. She kept talking. The town let her finish. My name is Hazel Warren. I am 22 years old, a barista from Crestwater Bay. Before I dive into what happened next, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Also, drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone is tuning in from. Alright, back to the story. Crestwater Bay is the kind of town where everyone knows your grandmother's middle name. 2,000 people. One stoplight, a bakery, a hardware store, a church with a leaky roof, and a coastline that takes a beating every other autumn. My parents ran a small hurricane shutter business out of our garage. My dad installed shutters all over the county for 30 years. My mom kept the books and packed his lunch every morning at 5. We were not rich. We were not poor. We were the kind of family that brought soup to widows and shoveled neighbors' driveways without being asked. My dad coached the under-12 soccer team for 15 years and never charged a cent. My mom taught Sunday school. People in town called my dad Big Walter because of his shoulders and his laugh. That is the family Tessa stood up and tried to burn down in front of over 200 witnesses. Hurricane Ophelia hit Crestwater Bay on a Friday night in October, 14 months before that scholarship ceremony. I remember because I had just turned 21 the week before, and my mom had made me a coconut cake. We ate the last slice as the rain started. The wind came in sideways around 11. The siding on our house began to crack. My dad ordered all of us into the inner hallway with mattresses on top of us. Tessa was 18. She was crying. I was holding her hand. My mom was praying. My dad was outside in the storm trying to brace the front door because it had started lifting off its hinges. When the eye passed over us, the silence was so complete you could hear water dripping from the ceiling. Then the second wall hit and the roof of the den collapsed inward. The garage was just gone. 30 years of my dad's tools, his entire business, his shutters, his trucks, his livelihood, all of it, peeled off into the dark like wet paper. We crawled out at sunrise. The whole street had been chewed up. 3 houses on our block were missing. My dad sat on the curb and did not say a single word for 2 hours. 2 months after the hurricane, my dad had a heart attack in the driveway. He had been working 16-hour days trying to rebuild the business with no inventory and no insurance payout because the policy had a loophole the size of a barn. He was carrying a box of borrowed tools to a job site. He stepped off the truck. He grabbed his chest, he went down. My mom was the one who found him. I was at the community college. Tessa was at home, but she was sleeping in late, headphones in, music up. He passed at the hospital 3 hours later. 49 years old. The doctor said the stress had been quietly eating him alive for months, and he had not told anyone. That was Big Walter. He never wanted to be a burden. He never wanted his daughters to worry. The funeral was the largest the church had seen in a decade. 300 people. The mayor cried. My mom held it together until the second hymn, and then she folded forward in the pew like a closed book. That night, Tessa locked herself in her room. She did not come out for 3 days. She did not eat. She did not speak. I should have known then. A week after the funeral, Mrs. Jordan from the bakery showed up at our front door with a casserole and an envelope. The envelope held $84,000. $84,000. In a town of 2,000 people. They had passed buckets at the diner, the church, the high school football game, and the hardware store. Mr. Dunbar matched the first 10,000 out of his own pocket without telling anyone. Pastor Oxbridge preached one sermon about it, and the offering plate came back so heavy, 2 ushers had to carry it. The money was for our education, mine and Tessa's, so we could finish college, so Big Walter's daughters would not have their futures buried with him. Mrs. Jordan sat at our kitchen table, held my mother's hand, and said, "Bea, you and Walter spent 30 years pouring into this town. Now we are pouring back into your girls. There are no strings. There is only love." My mother could not speak. She just held that envelope and shook. I made a vow that night, sitting on the back porch with my knees pulled to my chest. I would pay back every dollar one day. With interest. With more. I did not realize Tessa was listening at the screen door. Here is the part nobody knew. Not the pastor, not Mrs. Jordan, not even our parents. Before the hurricane, Tessa and I had been living 2 lives. By day, we were the Warren girls, polite, hardworking, front pew on Sunday. Tessa volunteered at the animal shelter. I tutored kids at the library. People in town pointed to us and told their own daughters, "Be like the Warren girls." By night, we were something else. We drove 40 minutes to the city most weekends. We hit clubs with fake IDs. We drank too much. We spent our part-time job money on outfits we hid in the back of our closets. We dated people we never brought home. Tessa had a boyfriend named Brent Foley who had been arrested twice, and we both lied about him. I had been quietly burning through my savings on weekend trips for 2 years. It was stupid. It was reckless. It was the kind of thing small-town girls do when they think nobody is paying attention. When the hurricane took our house and my dad collapsed, the noise of that double life fell silent inside me. I felt sick at every memory of it. I had been spending my dad's worry on cocktails. Tessa felt none of that. I quit it all. The clubs, the city trips, the boyfriend who only texted at midnight, the secret credit card, the lies. Cold turkey. 2 weeks after the funeral, I sat my mom down at the kitchen table, and I told her everything. Every weekend, every dollar, every lie. I cried so hard I could not breathe. My mom listened all the way through. Then she got up, walked around the table, sat next to me, and held me. She said, "Hazel, your dad never needed you to be perfect. He just needed you to be honest. You came home. That is all he ever asked." I started taking my classes seriously for the first time. I picked up extra shifts at Mrs. Jordan's bakery. I went to church on Sundays and meant it. I started a small notebook where I tracked every dollar of the community fund I touched, with a goal of paying every cent back within 10 years of graduating. People in town noticed. They did not say much. They just smiled at me a little longer at the post office. Pastor Oxbridge asked me to help with the youth group. Mr. Dunbar gave me a part-time job stocking shelves on Saturdays. Tessa watched all of this happen with cold eyes. Tessa did not change. She got worse. She kept seeing Brent. She kept sneaking out. She started skipping her community college classes. She started showing up to family dinners with red eyes and a smell on her clothes I could not place. She fought with our mother every other day. She slammed doors. She broke a glass once on purpose just to see my mom flinch. When I asked her gently, "Tess, are you okay?" her lips curled into that crooked smile she'd been honing since middle school. A trademark expression, equal parts charm and mischief, and say, "I am fine, Hazel. Mind your own scholarship." She started saying the word scholarship like it was an insult. Like the $84,000 gift was something I had taken from her, instead of something we had both been given. One night I heard her on the phone in the bathroom. She was talking to Brent. She said, and I will never forget this, she thinks she is the good one now. She thinks the town belongs to her. She has no idea what is coming. I told myself she was venting. I told myself she was grieving. I told myself she was my baby sister and she would come around the way I had. I was wrong on all 3 counts. It started small. So small I almost missed it. A rumor began to circulate at the bakery. A whisper at the post office. Solange, my best friend, came to me one Tuesday afternoon with her face pale and said, "Hazel, you need to hear what I just heard." Mrs. Vickers from the dry cleaners confided in her sister, who in turn passed it along to Pastor Oxbridge's secretary, that I had been spotted at a high-end boutique in the city 3 weekends in a row. Buying designer bags. Spending what people were calling obvious fun money. I had not been to the city in 9 months. I had not bought a designer anything in my entire life. My everyday handbag was a hand-me-down from my mom. I traced the rumor back 2 steps before I hit a wall. The trail kept dissolving the closer I got to the source. Somebody was being very careful. I went home that night and sat on the edge of Tessa's bed while she scrolled her phone. I asked her calmly, "Tess, has anyone been saying weird things about me in town?" She looked up, her face was perfectly blank. She said, "No. Why? What did you do?" That last sentence chilled me. A week later, Solange called me and told me to sit down. She had been scrolling Instagram and had stumbled onto a private account with 700 followers. The username was a twist on my name with 2 extra letters. The profile picture was a photo of me from 2 years earlier, taken at a club in the city, in a dress I had thrown out the day after my dad died. The account was full of these photos, old ones, photos I had not even known existed. Me drinking, me dancing on a table, me with people I no longer spoke to. Each post had a caption written to sound like me. "Off to the city again, who needs class on a Friday? Treat yourself, you earned it. Living my best life, what dad does not know does not hurt him." Each caption had been posted within the last 3 months. Long after my dad was gone, the account was being followed by people in our town, quietly. Mr. Dunbar's wife, Mrs. Louth Vickers, Pastor Oxbridge's daughter, the mayor's nephew. Whoever was running this account had access to old photos of me, the kind of photos only one person in the world could have taken. Tessa had been just outside the frame of every single one. I went to Mrs. Jordan. I sat at the corner table at the bakery on a Wednesday morning before the breakfast rush, and I told her about the rumors and the account. She listened with her hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee. She did not interrupt me once. When I finished, she said, "Hazel, sweetheart, I'm going to ask you to do something difficult. I'm going to ask you to keep coming to work and to behave exactly as you always do. Can you do that?" I said yes. She said, "Good. And if you notice anything strange, anything at all, you write it down with the time and the date. You bring it to me. You do not confront anyone. You do not post anything online. You do not even tell your mother." I said yes again. I did not know what she was planning. I did not ask. That Friday, the tip jar at the bakery went missing. $340 in cash. It turned up in my locker that afternoon, tucked behind my coat. The new dishwasher found it and gasped so loud Mrs. Jordan came running. Mrs. Jordan looked at me. I looked at her. She said one quiet word, "Steady." That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Somebody was hunting me. Somebody who knew my schedule, my locker combination, my old photos, my history, my weak points. Somebody who had access to the bakery during business hours. There were only a handful of people in this town who fit that description. And I could not let myself look at the most obvious one. She was my sister. She had cried in my arms during the hurricane. She had held my hand at our dad's grave. She had asked me to braid her hair the night before the funeral because her hands were shaking too hard. She was 19 years old. She had lost her father. She was sad. She was confused. She was lashing out. She was not a monster. I told myself this for 2 months. Meanwhile, the rumors got worse. People I had known my whole life started giving me strange looks. Mrs. Vickers stopped saying hello when I passed her in the street. The pastor's daughter unfriended me online. The boutique rumor traveled to the mayor's office. Through all of this, my sister was sweet to my face. She made me tea. She asked about my classes. She told me she loved me, and Mrs. Jordan kept watching. What Tessa did not know was that Mrs. Jordan had upgraded the bakery's security system the month after my dad died. 4 cameras, 2 indoor, 2 outdoor, high definition. The footage was backed up to a hard drive in her son's office in the city. Unknown to Tessa, Mr. Dunbar at the hardware store had a camera fixed on the alley behind the bakery, silently recording every shadow that passed. Because he had been losing inventory to a raccoon for years, and wanted footage to prove it to his insurance. What Tessa did not know was that Pastor Oxbridge's wife had a habit of taking long evening walks, and she walked past our house every night at exactly 9:15, and she had a very good memory for who came and went through the back fence. What Tessa did not know was that Mrs. Jordan had quietly sat down with 3 of those people and asked one simple question. "Have you been noticing anything strange?" And what Tessa did not know was that all three of them had said yes. By the time the tip jar showed up in my locker, the bakery cameras had captured Tessa walking into the back office at 3 p.m. with her hand inside her jacket and walking out with her hand in her pocket. The week of midterms, my chemistry textbook went missing. Then my anatomy textbook. Then my entire study notebook with 3 months of color-coded notes. I tore the house apart. My mom helped me look. Tessa helped me look. Tessa even cried with me when we could not find them. She hugged me and said, "I am so sorry, Hazel. Who would do this to you?" I went into my midterm with nothing. No notes, no textbook, no prep. I aced both exams. I had been studying every night for 4 months straight. The material was already inside me. They could take the books, they could not take what was already in my head. When I got my grade reports, I taped them to the fridge. My mother kissed both of them. Tessa walked into the kitchen, saw the grades, and her face did something I had never seen before. It went white, then red. Then she smiled too wide and said, "Wow, Hazel, you are just unstoppable." That night, Mr. Dunbar pulled Mrs. Jordan aside at the church potluck. He had something to show her on his phone. It was a video clip from his alley camera. It showed a young woman setting fire to a stack of books in a metal trash can behind the bakery dumpster. Mrs. Jordan did not tell me about the video. Not yet. Instead, the community made a decision. A handful of them. Mrs. Jordan, Mr. Dunbar, Pastor Oxbridge, Sheriff Brennan, Mayor Halverson. They met in the bakery's back office on a Sunday after church. They closed the door. They did not invite me. They did not invite my mother. They made a plan. They would gather. They would document. They would not act until they had so much evidence that no one in this town could deny what had happened. They would let me keep believing in my sister, because the moment I stopped believing in her, she would know. And she would either run, or she would do something far worse. They knew Tessa was building toward something. They could feel it. The pace of the sabotage was speeding up. The stakes were rising. There was a public moment coming. They could see it the way old farmers can see a storm building over the bay. Their job was to make sure that when she struck her biggest blow, it was in front of as many witnesses as possible, with all the evidence already prepared. So they waited, and they recorded, and they prayed, and Tessa kept escalating. His name was Reuben Hayes. He was 24, a quiet mechanic from 2 towns over, and he started coming into the bakery every morning for a black coffee and a blueberry muffin. He never said much at first, just smiled, left a tip, walked out. By the 3rd week, we were talking. By the 5th week, he was waiting around the corner to walk me home. By the 8th week, my mother was asking when she could meet him. Reuben was the first good thing that had happened to me since the hurricane. He was steady. He was patient. He was the kind of man who fixed his own truck and read books about beekeeping. He laughed at my jokes. He asked me questions about my classes and remembered the answers a week later. Tessa hated him on sight. She tried to flirt with him at our kitchen table. He was polite and uninterested. She tried to text him from a number he did not know. He showed me the messages without being asked. She tried to spread a rumor that he was already engaged to a woman in his hometown. He took me to meet his entire family on a Sunday afternoon to prove it was a lie. Tessa decided she was going to destroy him too. 3 weeks before the scholarship ceremony, the campus security guard at my community college pulled me out of my morning class. He took me to the dean's office. The dean was sitting behind his desk with 2 pill bottles in front of him. "Miss Warren," he said, "these were found in your locker during a random check." I had never seen those bottles before in my life. The labels were peeled off. The pills inside were white and unmarked. The dean said the campus was going to send them to be tested. He said if they came back as a controlled substance, my scholarship eligibility was finished and my enrollment was finished. I sat in that office and I felt the world tilt. I told the dean the truth. I told him I had no idea where those bottles came from. I told him I had not opened my locker that morning. I told him to please test the bottles and pull the security camera footage from the hallway. The dean nodded slowly. He said, "Miss Warren, I have already pulled the footage. Sit tight. Sheriff Brennan is on his way to my office." My stomach dropped. Sheriff Brennan walked into the dean's office 20 minutes later carrying a tablet. He sat down across from me. He looked tired but not angry. He looked almost kind. He said, "Hazel, I'm going to show you something. I want you to take your time and tell me what you see." He turned the tablet toward me. The screen showed grainy hallway footage from the locker bank outside my chemistry classroom. The timestamp said yesterday afternoon, 4:11. A figure in a dark hoodie walked up to my locker, spun the dial, opened it, pulled a plastic bag out of the front pocket of the hoodie, tucked it inside, closed the locker, walked away. Halfway down the hall, the figure turned her head to glance over her shoulder. The hoodie's shadow lifted. It was Tessa. I did not say anything. I just stared at the freeze frame of my baby sister on that screen, and I felt something quiet and final close inside my chest. Sheriff Brennan said, "Hazel, I want you to know something. We have been watching her for 9 months. We have a lot more than this. We are not going to act yet. We need you to keep being yourself. Can you do that?" I said yes. 2 weeks before the scholarship ceremony, Tessa started being sweet to me again. Suspiciously sweet. She braided my hair like she used to when we were little. She made me coffee in the mornings. She asked me about Reuben. She told me she was proud of me. She cried once and said she had been a bad sister and she was sorry. I held her while she cried. I told her I forgave her. I told her we were a team. I told her Mom needed both of us. I lied through my teeth, and I felt nothing. Mrs. Jordan had told me, the day after the locker footage, exactly what Tessa was probably building toward. The scholarship ceremony was the biggest community event of the year. The whole town would be there. The mayor would speak. The pastor would speak. The fund committee would announce who was getting what for the next academic year. If Tessa wanted to destroy me, publicly, that was the stage. That was the audience. That was the moment. So we let her plan it. We let her think she was getting away with it. We let her believe that I trusted her completely and that I did not see her coming. Meanwhile, the town finished assembling the file. The night before the ceremony, Tessa and I sat on the back porch. She handed me a glass of lemonade. She looked up at the stars. She said, "Hazel, do you ever feel like Dad is watching us?" I almost broke. I almost grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her. I almost screamed at her, "He is watching us, Tessa, and what do you think he is seeing right now?" But I held the glass. I sipped the lemonade. I said, "Every day, Tess. Every single day." She smiled. She squeezed my hand. She said, "I am really glad we have each other." She went inside. I sat on that porch for another hour and I cried so quietly my mother would not hear me through the kitchen window. I cried for the sister I had grown up with. I cried for the little girl who had begged me to braid her hair the night before the funeral. I cried for the version of Tessa who could have made a different choice at every fork in the road and had chosen the wrong one every single time. Then I dried my face. I went inside. I went to bed. The next morning I put on my best dress. I went to the ceremony. The mayor was speaking. He had just announced that this year, the fund had decided to expand and offer 2 full-ride scholarships to the 4-year university of the recipient's choice. He had just said my name. Tessa stood up. The room turned. The applause died. The mayor lowered his microphone. Tessa lifted a printed bank statement above her head. She raised her voice. She said, "Before you give my sister anything, this town needs to know who she really is." She walked to the front. She took the microphone out of the mayor's hand. The mayor let her take it. He did not fight her. That should have been her first warning. She said I had been stealing from the community fund for a year. She said the bank statement in her hand proved it. She said she had been suffering in silence, watching her sister exploit the kindness of an entire town, and she could no longer stay quiet. She said she had photos. She said she had screenshots. She said she had witnesses. She held up her phone. She showed the fake Instagram account on the projector. She turned to me. She said, "Hazel, do you have anything to say for yourself?" I stood up. I said no. But Mrs. Jordan does. Mrs. Jordan walked to the front of the town hall. She was 63 years old. She was 4 feet 11 inches tall. She had floured arms from the morning shift. She was the most powerful person in that room and everyone knew it. She took the microphone. She nodded at the AV booth in the back. The screen behind her changed. The fake Instagram disappeared. In its place, a piece of bakery security footage played. Tessa, in a dark hoodie, walking into the office. Tessa pulling cash out of the tip jar. Tessa putting the empty jar in her bag. Tessa walking out. Then the footage changed. The alley behind the dumpster. Tessa with a stack of textbooks, a lighter, a trash can. Then the footage changed again. The hallway at the community college. Tessa with the pill bottles. Then the footage changed again. Mr. Dunbar's parking lot security camera. Tessa meeting with Brent Foley and handing him an envelope of cash. Mrs. Jordan said that cash, by the way, came out of the community fund last March. The bank flagged it. Sheriff Brennan has the records. The town hall was silent. Tessa was frozen at the front. The bank statement in her hand was shaking. Mrs. Jordan said, "We are not done." Sheriff Brennan walked up next. He laid out the bank evidence. Tessa had withdrawn just over $6,000 from the community fund over a period of 11 months. She had moved it through Brent's account. Brent had used it to pay off 2 of his own debts and to buy a used motorcycle. The bank had been quietly flagging the transactions since month 2. They had cooperated with the sheriff. They had a complete paper trail. Pastor Oxbridge walked up next. He was holding printed messages. Tessa had been emailing the boutique in the city. She had been buying designer items in my name and having them shipped to a P.O. box she had opened in her own name. The boutique manager had been fully cooperating with the investigation for 6 months. They had every receipt. Solange's brother, who worked at the bank, was sitting in the 3rd row. He stood up. He confirmed the timeline. Mr. Dunbar stood up. He confirmed the alley footage. Pastor Oxbridge's wife stood up. She confirmed the late-night meetings with Brent at our back fence. One by one, person after person in that town stood up. Tessa was looking at all of them. Her mouth was open. The microphone was shaking in her hand. She said, "No." Brent Foley was arrested in the parking lot before the ceremony was over. The sheriff had 2 deputies waiting. He had been sitting in his pickup truck waiting for Tessa to come out victorious. Instead, 2 officers walked him to the cruiser in front of half the town, who had stepped outside to watch. Tessa was not arrested. The community made a different choice. Mrs. Jordan told her in front of everyone that the fund committee was permanently revoking her access to a single dollar of the $84,000. She would receive no more support for her education from this town. She would be required to enter a restitution program with the church and complete 2,000 hours of community service. If she refused, the sheriff was holding charges in reserve. My mother was in the 2nd row. She had not known any of this. She watched her younger daughter shrink and shrink in front of 200 witnesses, and her face did something that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. She did not cry. She just nodded once, like a door closing. The mayor turned back to me. He said, "Hazel Warren, the fund committee would like to formally award you the full ride scholarship to the nursing program at State University." I cried then. 3 months later, Tessa knocked on the back door of the bakery. It was a Tuesday morning. I was in the kitchen rolling out dough. Mrs. Jordan was at the front counter. Reuben had just dropped me off for the early shift. I opened the door. Tessa was on the step. She had lost weight. Her hair was in a low ponytail. She did not have makeup on. She looked, for the first time in 2 years, like my sister. She said, "Hazel, I am so sorry for everything. I do not have words. I do not have words." I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about the hurricane. I thought about my dad on the curb. I thought about the casserole and the envelope and the $84,000. I thought about my mom in the 2nd row. I thought about every quiet person in this town who had stood up for me when I had not even known I was sinking. I reached behind the door. I took down a clean apron from the hook. I held it out to her. I said, "Mrs. Jordan is hiring. Start at the bottom, like the rest of us did." I closed the door. If this story struck a chord deep inside you, pour your thoughts into the comments below. And if you've ever had to rebuild your life from the ashes, or you're still quietly rebuilding it piece by piece, you're exactly where you belong. Hit subscribe, leave a like, and stay close for the next story.